are going to be shooting. So,
go ahead, just say, go ahead, little buddy.
just real quick, I know we're almost done here, but I'll reintroduce myself, Greg Thudium, Chandler PD. I've been on the job 17 years, 9 years on our SWAT team. I've been teaching DT since 04, part of the SME committee, so I teach all over the state and do a lot. So this particular section, retention of a pistol is something we do a lot. I teach it a lot, all over the place at different levels, academy. So Troy's going to help you because, you know, what we may do may have small variations to it. We want to show some different techniques and different ideas behind it that you may see regionally. So if you go teach somewhere else, you may see something. So we're talking about the key is here is a retention position. We want to discuss why would we have to pull the gun in to get to a retention position. So we want to focus on what that retention position is, some of the good and the bad with it, some of the key things that instructors we need to look out for when we're in that position, and then also the why. Why would we get to that position with the gun, right? Why would we need to do that? Most levels in DT, you're going to cover with the recruits, you know, gun in the holster, right? And retaining the gun in the holster. That's not really what we're going to talk about too much today. But if you do any research into it, you'll find that very rarely do officers lose their guns from the holster. Okay? Any ideas why? Why we really don't see officers' guns taken out of holsters anymore? Retention devices, right? 20 years of it. I mean, over the last 20 years, all these different ones that we have, they've gotten much better. So you look at the statistics, rarely do you actually see an officer lose their gun out of the holster. Can you tell me one incident where it happens actually? The only time that I've ever seen it actually happens quite often.
Bring the hood back up, it's like a running or some shit.
No. A situation where a suspect might be able to get the gun out of the holster.
The officer's unconscious.
Well, yeah, that's a big one, but on the ground, when we're on the ground. So if you look at statistics over the last 4 or 5 years, the only times officers have lost their gun out of their holster is on the ground, okay? Why? Because we're in close and they can start manipulating that a little bit easier, right? So we're not focused on that. Where you see officers lose their gun is when we bring the gun out, okay, and into the fight. And maybe it's not the appropriate distance. Maybe it is. Maybe we're fighting and we got to get that thing out. But the opportunity for the suspect to grab the gun now and us to fight over the gun becomes prominent. One thing you see a lot with recruits is, right, they get stressed out, they get freaked out, and maybe the guy is not somebody we need to draw the gun on. He probably needs to be, some force needs to be delivered, but what do? They freak out and they start pointing from here. And now, can I shoot him, right? Maybe yes, maybe no, what's the circumstances? But what did they not do? Put this away, right, and use force. So this stays out, and now Troy gets close enough to this where he can grab it, and now we're in a whole another situation, right? So what we're going to show is two things. One is we're going to show is what if the gun's out and he's going for the gun. He doesn't have it yet, but he's going towards the gun. And that's what I'm anticipating is happening. And I want to get this gun to that retention position so he doesn't grab it. The second is a little more worst case. He's grabbed the gun for whatever reason, okay? And now I got to get this to a retention position, and I've got to deal with whatever that is. I don't want to lose my gun, and then what is going to happen with all that? All right, so the retention position, very simply just to show that, right? We were talking already in class today, so this translates really well, is if I'm down in this kind of low ready position, right? The gun comes up here, the gun is much closer to my suspect now, right? So coming into this contact ready position is what we teach to our guys, right? I'm already in somewhat of a retention position. This is very easy for them to understand the gun being back here, right? And it coming back to this position. So that's very easy. The good thing too is I can shoot if necessary, right? If I'm authorized or if I feel justified, I can fire rounds from here, which is very good. So the retention position is just a slight variation of that. It can be pulling the gun here to my center, and maybe I'm engaging now, or it can be where I'm going to a little more of a DT position where I'm going to bring something up to protect myself, or I'm going to deliver force. So take some force, or I'm going to deliver some force, okay? So once we have them in this position here and we have them understand that this is a simple contact position, I can pull the gun back and I can deal with them. The other thing is if I feel that they're continuing forward and coming at me, all I need to do is bring this back to here, okay? I want to protect myself because I don't know, is he going to throw a punch? Is he going to get another weapon, right? As I'm bringing this back to my body here, my offhand releases And what is the concern now if I let this hand be out here? Right? If I fire, right, or he pushes my hand, right, in front of the gun, I got an issue, right? So what do we tell him? We want to do something with his hand, right? So we show is as soon as if I'm right, this hand is coming up high and tight. We tell him, hey, it's like the fawns. You're just gonna comb your hair and tuck it in nice and tight like this, protecting my biocomputer. So if somebody throws a punch, something comes at me, whatever, I can actually absorb that force, right? And then my gun is coming back and locking in here, okay? Locking into my body. Now, can I fire around? I can possibly, right? We'll talk about a couple of issues here, but I can, but also I can defend myself here, right? Now, if I need to, can I put this away? Yeah, right? Can I now move and reposition myself? I can. If this is going away, could I even strike now? Possibly. The one concern is I don't want to have this here and I'm striking, and you see that, and now am I sympathetically pulling the trigger at the same time? And now, who knows what's going on with my arm, right? So that's a concern. I'm not a fan of moving backwards because we don't know what's behind us. We don't move very well backwards. So what I teach is stepping the side or stepping at an angle as soon as that comes, and we'll show that. So here's the position, right? I'm coming back to here. That's the first position. I might fire from here, depends on the circumstances. I can move. If Troy is coming at me, right, I can pull this in, I can move, I can circle, and I can still engage here. If that's what I need to do and justify. I can put rounds and still hit, and I can continue to move like that and keep that locked in here, right? The other position is I've got to come back, and maybe he's throwing a punch, something, right? And I'm going to come back to here, and I'm protecting my head. My muzzle is pointed at their body somehow, center line, right? Locking my wrist right in here, locking my elbow in. Okay? So that's the second position we're going to talk about. The key with the gun now is when I bring this back, if I'm here, and especially if you got like an outer vest on, what's our concern? So we want to cover.
Slide's gonna hit your gear if you fire.
Right, slide coming back and catching my gear, right, and causing malfunction. So what I want to do is, as the gun comes back, I want to slightly cant this, lock my wrist, the butt of the gun in here. Okay, that way the slide can move freely, and I can still continue to fire rounds. Right, elbows locked in. This is locked into the body. Right, so that's the key here. Is we want to make sure we're talking about when this comes back, we want to slightly cant that gun so we can continue to fire. Make sense? Okay, any questions on that so far? All right, so again, we'll start out and we'll show the basics with this, and then we'll talk about firing the weapon. So the two situations we're dealing with. We have suspect. I've got him at gunpoint. He is closing on me, right? And I'm moving maybe, and I can't. Right? He's getting too close. So I want to pull this gun into this position. Right? Now I make a decision. I need to either holster this or I need to continue moving. Maybe I deliver rounds. Right? And we don't want to tell them what to do, but we have to give them all the options of what possibly they might do in this situation. Right? Totality of the circumstances of what's going on. Second one is same thing, and as he closes, I get to here, and maybe I now have to defend. So I'm going to bring that arm up, tuck it nice and high, gun comes in, cants and locks right here. All right? And then I'm in that same spot. So when we're actually facing down range with our guns, when we do this, what we'll do is we'll just have you guys facing a target, and we'll just start here, right? And we'll have you bring it back to this position here, and we'll show you can shoot accurately here, right? Not a problem. Lock in the wrist, line it up, right? We'll also come back, right? We'll bring the gun back, lock up, and we'll rotate that gun out, and you can still fire. And you'll see that that'll work and function also, right? Again, the key is what? I don't want this hand to be out here. So this has to be done very slowly because the danger of, right, their hands. So we have to be very careful. So we'll do coach shooter that way. The coach is right there to see, making sure that this hand is tucked and out of the way. I've seen guys and they tuck and they turn because they're like, oh shit, right? Maybe a punch is coming and now what am I doing? Okay, right? And I've seen some pretty crazy different techniques. There's some guys out there who teach, they call it a cape, which is the hand comes across here, right? There are some good things with that, but can we also see an issue again here, right? So if you find some of these techniques out there and guys show it to you, analyze them and decide whether it's something you think is pretty legitimate. Some of the SF guys, they'll do, they call it the fake, and they actually step forward and use that elbow, right? It allows them to strike and keep the gun pointed here, but obviously what's our level of our student? Because that's a pretty aggressive move, and if rounds are being fired at the same time. So just analyze those different things that are out there, and make sure it's something you think is safe and actually going to be pretty practical for your students and what level you're at. Okay.
So, worst case scenario, guys, you've got it tucked in here, but he approaches you, and you can't get any further away, right? He's on top of you, and you can articulate using lethal force. But what is our concern when the gun's pressed into his body? It comes out of battery, right? So I'm going to tell you something that Frank taught me 15 years ago. Will the gun function if we put our thumb behind the slide and lock the slide in? One shot, right? Can we use that to get that space? Absolutely. So he comes in, he comes on top, you hold it in battery, pull the trigger, that should give you some space. What's the first thing you got to do though? Tap rack. Okay? So we'll have you fire a couple like that from that position where you go to tap rack. That's all I have.
So just a little variation, something to let them understand that, hey, this is good. I mean, even if I don't, right, if I don't have my thumb in the back, if we're at contact or I somehow hit them, it's going to malfunction, right? I might get that one shot, so we have to make sure we're reinforcing. Once we create some distance, right, get the gun back to retention position, do what I have to do, create some distance. I got to tap rack, get this thing up and running.